She kissed me on the cheek, said it was just a work dinner, but by sunrise, our entire life had been turned inside out. Let me skip over the typical how we met story, not because it isn't meaningful but because it's not really what this is about. So here's the gist. By the time the most important events of this story unfolded, I was 33, married to my wife, Rachel Weston, for over a decade. We had two beautiful daughters, Emily, who had just turned 8, and Sophie, 6 years old at the time. Rachel and I were pretty evenly matched in a lot of ways. We're both decently attractive, reasonably sharp, and in good shape. Not movie star material or Nobel laureates, but we held our own. Our chemistry? Solid. Neither of us were exactly burning with passion 24/7, but we had a satisfying, steady connection, physically and emotionally. Rachel worked as a corporate attorney, mainly focused on contract law with a strong background in estate planning, trusts, wills, legacies, all that. I was the VP of procurement at a modest-sized public firm, where I handled everything from office supplies to IT infrastructure. My sister, Jessica, everyone just calls her Jess, lived nearby with her husband, Mike. Their twin daughters, Hannah and Lily, were 7, just a year behind Emily and Sophie. They lived a mile or so from the Carters, a family we were also close with, and just a few miles from us. Thanks to a big nature preserve that ran between our neighborhoods, our kids went to the same elementary school and were practically inseparable. Even though I hadn't known Mike before he started dating Jess, they tied the knot barely 6 months after meeting. He ended up becoming my closest friend. Now, Rachel had this particular mindset about money. She wasn't reckless or impulsive, just unconventional. She firmly believed that investing in fine jewelry and artwork wasn't just a luxury, but a smart financial move. According to her, gold and platinum would always go up in value. I, on the other hand, put my focus on the stock market, equities, mutual funds, the occasional ETF. So over time, a big chunk of our savings went into things like necklaces, rings, paintings, and sculptures. Pieces for both of us, but especially her. We even encouraged family members to gift our daughters small jewelry or child-friendly art on birthdays and holidays, alongside the usual toys, games, and books. Given how valuable our growing collection had become, we didn't take any chances with security. We installed a top-notch system throughout the house, including sensors tied to 12 of our most valuable paintings and a couple of sculptures. There was a secure safe built right into the floor of our bedroom, and both Rachel and I had personal desks, each with locks. But only she had the key to hers. I was the only one who had the key to our main household safe. Rachel, on the other hand, had the key to a second safe that was nested inside the first, her own little vault within a vault. We'd taken extra steps to make sure our home security system never lost power, even in a worst-case scenario. There was a generator in the garage and a backup battery system just in case the generator failed. Redundancy gave us peace of mind. My brother-in-law, Mike, took a similar approach with his setup, though his was more modest. He installed high-resolution cameras covering the 3 main entrances to their home, along with a decent, though not top-tier, security system. I guess he figured if we were going all in on safety, he might as well follow suit. Rachel had this interesting habit, one I think came from her legal background, where she'd make sure any piece of jewelry or artwork we added to our collection was quickly accounted for in our wills. She took estate planning seriously, and it showed. In my own will, I'd left all of my personal jewelry, watches, cufflinks, rings, to our daughters Emily and Sophie in the event that I passed before Rachel. If she were to go first, everything of hers would be left to them as well. As for the artwork, we decided to alternate. One piece would go to Emily, the next to Sophie, and so on. That meant technically some of the collection belonged to me and some of it to Rachel, since you can't leave something in your will that you don't fully own. At the time, everything seemed steady, normal. I thought our life was in a good place. Then came that Thursday night. I got home from work a little later than usual. Rachel was already waiting for me, the house was quiet and the girls were nowhere in sight. I noticed the soft glow of candlelight before I even stepped into the dining room. She greeted me with this fiery kiss, dressed in something far more daring than her usual evening wear. I raised an eyebrow and asked, "Where are Emily and Sophie?" With a sly grin she said, "Jess and Mike offered to take them for the night. They'll even bring them to school in the morning." She gave a little laugh. You should have seen their faces when I told them they'd be sleeping over with Hannah and Lily. I chuckled, sliding my arms around her waist. "What are we going to do without the girls?" I teased. Rachel leaned into me, that mischievous spark in her eyes. "I'm sure we'll think of something," she said, giving my hand a playful squeeze. Dinner was incredible, a perfect blend of elegance and flirtation. The way she looked at me, the way she touched my hand, it all felt so intentional. Afterward, we put on some soft music and danced barefoot in the living room, moving slowly to the rhythms we'd been practicing in our weekend dance classes. It was one of those rare, beautiful nights where everything felt just right. We moved as one, lost in the moment, in the comfort of each other's presence. Eventually, Rachel's touch became more deliberate, her hands more curious, and we quietly made our way upstairs. She helped me out of my clothes, slowly, teasingly, and I returned the favor. Before long, we were tangled in the sheets, bodies pressed together, the outside world forgotten. When we finally lay still, catching our breath in the dim light of the bedroom, Rachel rolled over and began trailing kisses across my cheeks and down to my neck. Her voice was soft and playful when she whispered, "Tell me that wasn't amazing." Of course, she already knew the answer. But I still smiled and nodded because in that moment, everything felt perfect. Or at least, it seemed that way. I must have said something corny, mixed up a metaphor or two in the middle of basking in the afterglow, because Rachel burst out laughing. Not her usual chuckle either. This was a full-on flirty laugh, the kind that made it feel like I was lying beside some enchanting version of my wife I didn't quite recognize. A woman who was suddenly so bold, so playful, it made me wonder where this side of her had been hiding. Eventually we dozed off. But apparently Rachel wasn't quite done with me yet. Sometime after midnight, I felt her stirring. She leaned over, kissed me softly, and just like that, we were tangled up again. No words. No hesitation. Just a quiet urgency between us. And now, I know what you're probably thinking. If I was describing what might have been the most passionate night of my life, why did I start this whole story by saying everything seemed fine until one Thursday evening? That's what I couldn't stop asking myself. Knowing Rachel, how layered she could be, I couldn't help but wonder, what was all this about? Was it a spark reignited between us? A new chapter in our intimacy? Or was it something else? Was this sudden burst of passion her way of distracting me, or softening me up? Those questions swirled in my mind as I drifted back to sleep for the second time that night. Friday morning came and Rachel was as affectionate as ever. Kisses over coffee, fingers brushing my arm, that warm smile she used to flash back when we were dating. I convinced myself that maybe this was just us leveling up somehow, reconnecting. Maybe it really was that simple. I walked into the office grinning like a fool. My coworkers picked up on it right away, cracking jokes, asking what had me in such a good mood. I brushed them off, but truth be told, I was glowing. It felt like we'd rediscovered something powerful. But that high didn't last. Later that afternoon, my secretary buzzed in and said, "Your wife's on the line." I picked up with a smirk and greeted her the way I often did when I was feeling especially flirty. "Well, hello there, goddess of affection." Rachel laughed. "I'm pretty sure I'm not Greek." "No, but you're definitely the goddess of desire and passion," I said with a wink in my voice. We joked for a bit, just trading banter and small talk. It was light-hearted, until her tone shifted. She cleared her throat and said, "Hey, so I was hoping you could do me a favor tonight." That's when my stomach tensed. She went on to explain that some of her co-workers were planning a get-together, a dinner and drinks thing, apparently organized by a new morale consultant their company had hired. It was supposed to be part of a team-building initiative. "I was wondering if you could pick up the girls from school and handle dinner tonight?" she asked. I blinked. "Wait, you're not coming home?" I asked, trying to hide the disappointment in my voice. "Oh, I'll be home," she said, her voice suddenly sweet again. "But not till later. The dinner's at 6:30, and I won't have time to do both." "Can't you skip it?" I asked, not quite hiding the irritation in my tone. Rachel sighed. "Please, babe. I don't want to be the only one who doesn't show up. It's supposed to be part of the whole sacrifice for the team thing. I promise I'd rather be home with you and the girls. But I feel like I have to go." Something about that explanation didn't sit right with me. I mean, in all the years she'd worked at that firm, I couldn't recall her ever inviting a coworker over for dinner, let alone mentioning a morale consultant. It felt like this came out of nowhere. And just like that, all the warmth I'd been feeling earlier started to fade. My thoughts clouded over. I didn't want to admit it, not even to myself, but I could feel it. That old, unwelcome feeling creeping in again. Suspicion. Something was off. That evening, I did what I always do when it's just me and the girls, kept it simple and warm. I picked them up from school and we made their favorite dinner together. Classic mac and cheese with a fresh salad on the side. Comfort food. Something about the routine of it helped settle my nerves, at least for a little while. When Rachel came downstairs, dressed to the nines in a sleek new outfit I hadn't seen before, my heart sank a bit. She looked stunning, sure, but not like she was headed to a casual work dinner. This was something else. She barely smiled as she kissed each of us on the cheek, careful not to smudge her lipstick or wrinkle her dress. "You look radiant," I told her, though my tone was more concerned than admiring. "This dress isn't for attention," she replied, smoothing the fabric down over her hips as she glanced in the hallway mirror. "It's just nice to feel confident." Still, I couldn't keep quiet. "I just can't believe you're heading out until 11:30 again. Especially after the last few times, when you said you'd be home earlier and weren't. Rachel, you've lied about this. It's starting to wear on me." She turned toward me, her tone steady. "Austin, you have no reason not to trust me. We've been together for over a decade. We've built a life, a family. That has to count for something." I nodded slowly. "Then let's talk tonight when you get home. Even if it's late." "We can't talk tonight," I said, more coldly than I intended. "Because we won't be here." Rachel tilted her head, puzzled. "What?" "The girls and I are going to Jess and Mike's for the night." "Don't wait up," I added, already moving toward the door. I didn't slam it. But I didn't close it gently either. From the one-way panel near the front entrance I paused. I watched as Rachel hesitated, hand hovering near the handle, confusion etched into her face. After a moment she simply shrugged, grabbed her purse and walked toward the car. That was the last time I saw her that night. Hours later, deep into the early morning, my phone rang. I was barely awake when I answered, groggy and irritated. "Austin?" came Rachel's voice, tense and clearly shaken. "Where are you?" "I told you. We're at Jess's." "Why are you calling me at this hour?" There was a pause. And then came the words that made my blood run cold. "We've been robbed," she said, her voice cracking. "Everything's gone. The jewelry, the artwork, it's all missing." My heart slammed against my chest. Without a word, I opened the voice memo app on my phone and hit record. "Say that again," I told her, trying to stay calm. "What exactly happened?" She repeated it. "The safe is empty. The art pieces, all the ones with the sensors, they're gone." I didn't waste another second. I grabbed my keys and bolted out the door. When I arrived home, Rachel was already there, standing in the doorway, panic written across her face. I didn't even greet her. I brushed past and shouted, "Get out of the way." My flashlight cut through the darkness as I stormed toward the basement. "Did you call the police?" I barked. "No. Not yet," she stammered, clearly overwhelmed. "Then do it," I snapped. "What are you waiting for?" She fumbled through her purse for her phone as I continued down the stairs. The moment I hit the bottom step, it became obvious. The power had been cut. Main breaker, off. Generator, switched off. Backup battery? Completely disconnected. Even the landline, our direct line to the alarm company, had been severed. This wasn't some amateur break-in. Back upstairs, the police had arrived. I spoke with one of the officers, filling him in on the call I'd received and the details Rachel had shared. From my office, I pulled up the catalog we kept. A detailed list of every valuable we'd insured. 2 other officers, both male, were already inside the house, sweeping it to ensure no one was hiding. That thought hadn't even crossed my mind, that the intruder could still be there. It sent a fresh chill through me. Rachel eventually managed to calm herself down enough to speak with the female officer who had taken over her statement. I watched as she gave her account, tearful, shaky, but coherent. She was trying, I could see that. But in the back of my mind, a different kind of storm was brewing. Something still didn't sit right. I pulled one of the officers aside, not in a dramatic way, just quietly enough so Rachel wouldn't hear. We stood near the hallway by the stairs. I lowered my voice and said, "She almost admitted it to me last night. I have a recording, on my iPhone." The officer raised his eyebrows slightly but nodded. "All right. If you can get that transcribed or at least a summary ready, I'll need a report by tomorrow." I blinked, confused for a second. "Wait, tomorrow's Sunday, right?" He shook his head, chuckling. "No, sir. It's Saturday. I keep thinking it's Friday because I'm still trying to wake up. Not used to getting a call at 3:30 in the morning." I let out a tired laugh. "Yeah, makes sense. Okay, I'll have it ready by noon today." "Great," he said. "If you can bring it to the station, just ask for Officer Smithson." "I'll be there around 1 or 1:30, I replied. "No problem." What I wasn't ready for, though, was what came next. Later that morning, I finally got the package from the private investigator. I sat alone in my car, hands trembling slightly as I opened the envelope. Inside were printed stills, photographs taken from a distance but clear enough to make my stomach turn. Rachel was there. Not just with someone, with him. Jack Taylor. The man I hadn't even heard of until a few months ago. The man who, up until that moment, I'd only suspected. The PI had tracked them to a private property outside town. A place that, oddly enough, I never would have connected to either of them. The investigator said it had been difficult to capture anything conclusive indoors, but the couple made that unnecessary. Their complete lack of discretion did all the work. They were out in the open, on the deck, in the pool, kissing, touching, like no one else in the world existed. Privacy didn't seem to be a concern, the investigator had written in his notes. And frankly, that worked in our favor. I nodded slowly, letting the anger boil quietly under the surface. Then something clicked. I remembered something simple but possibly important. I think Bill might have something, I muttered aloud. Grayson, the lead officer on the case, looked up. What's that? My brother-in-law Bill. He has security cameras, motion activated. If Rachel came home before she called me, there might be footage. Can we get access to it? He asked. I think so, I said. Bill's a tech guy, he probably saved it to DVD. I pulled out my phone and called Jess. She passed the phone to Bill, and within the hour he handed over the original DVD. I didn't waste time. I dropped it off at my lawyer's office downtown. He works weekends. I just told him to hold on to it, keep it locked up. No rush yet, but we might need it soon. I made 2 copies for myself. One went in my locked desk drawer. The other? I left it right on the coffee table in the living room. I didn't say a word about it to Rachel. Later that afternoon, she asked if she could join the kids and me at the park. I let her come. But I didn't really see her there. I spent the time playing with Emily and Sophie, pushing them on the swings, laughing at their games. I barely looked in her direction. That night, after the girls were asleep, I sat on the couch watching a rerun of some old sitcom, trying to act normal, trying to figure out my next move. That's when Rachel appeared beside me holding a few sheets of paper. I need you to sign this, she said, holding out an insurance claim form. It's for the stolen items. I want to fax it in tomorrow, first thing. I glanced at it briefly. Then, without looking up from the TV, I grabbed a pen and jotted down the fax number for the insurance company's branch. She stood there for a second, waiting for a reaction. But I had none to give. Not yet. I looked Rachel straight in the eye and told her, calmly but firmly, I'm not signing that form. And if you so much as think about forging my signature, I'll have no choice but to press charges. Fraud's still a crime even if you're my wife. She exploded. Screamed at me, called me heartless, accused me of trying to ruin her. But I didn't flinch. I just stood there, quiet, letting her rage bounce off me like rain off a windshield. Later that day, Detective Grayson reached out and asked me to meet him at a warehouse just 10 minutes from our neighborhood. Some of the stolen items had been recovered, and they needed help identifying what was ours. I drove over without saying anything to Rachel. Walking through the rows of recovered property, it didn't take long before I spotted our things, unmistakable. The jewelry, the sculptures, even the smaller pieces we'd collected over the years. I could feel it in my chest, that cold, dull thud of betrayal all over again. Oddly, only 2 items were still missing. My Rolex and a set of gold cufflinks I'd inherited from my grandfather. Everything else? Accounted for. Grayson called again later that evening. He walked me through where things stood legally. He also reminded me that I needed to pick up the girls the following day, since Rachel had to appear in court. It wasn't a simple hearing. It was serious. In front of the judge, Rachel tried to paint a different picture, said I was trying to keep her out of the house unfairly. She even had the nerve to claim that I was the one taking things that didn't belong to me, including property meant for the girls. The judge didn't buy it. Not entirely, at least. He postponed the hearing until Rachel could post bail. She got help from her parents, no surprise there, and by Thursday she was out. But the court didn't let her just walk free. She was ordered to apply immediately for a family court hearing about a protective order. Her attorney tried to downplay everything. Claimed she was innocent of theft because she hadn't threatened anyone, hadn't hurt anyone physically. That's not the bar, I wanted to say. You don't have to be violent to betray your family. When I expressed concern that she might bring her new boyfriend, Jack Taylor of all people, to the house, her lawyer insisted she wouldn't. The judge looked at me and promised that Rachel had agreed to stay away from the property with any outside parties. I wanted to shout, she's lying. But I kept my cool. Instead, I called Louise, the contractor we'd used in the past, and asked her to replace the bedroom door entirely. I told her to reinforce the frame and install a high-security smart lock, the kind that couldn't be forced or cracked easily. It was less about protection at that point, and more about reclaiming something that still felt like mine. Rachel's things were quietly moved into the guest room. When she showed up that Saturday morning, the girls ran to greet her. Of course they did. They didn't know the full story yet, just bits and pieces. They were still young. I didn't want to poison their hearts with adult bitterness. I kept my distance, polite but cold. That night, after the girls were in bed, Rachel approached me in the living room. She looked tired. Not physically, but like someone trying to hold on to a lie that's slipping through their fingers. "We need to talk," she said. I stood up and kept my tone steady. "There's nothing to talk about. This marriage is over. I'm filing for divorce. There's no more if, no more maybe. This is done." "Austin," she whispered, reaching out, "please?" I shook my head and cut her off. "No. This conversation only continues if you're here to listen. Not beg, not argue. Are you ready to listen?" She nodded, eyes glassy. "I'll revise the divorce filing to irreconcilable differences, to make this easier on everyone. But don't mistake that for mercy. This is done. I'm filing for full custody of the girls," I told Rachel, calm but unwavering. "But I won't keep them from you. You'll have visitation whenever it's appropriate. We'll split holidays and you can have them during summer breaks. But the legal custody? That stays with me." She broke down, the words barely making it out through her sobs. "You're going to take everything from me," she cried. "Austin, I'm scared. I'll lose them. I'll lose everything." I stood in front of her, face to face, and looked her in the eyes. "Tell me something, Rachel," I said, voice low. "Do you feel any real remorse? For the collapse of this marriage? For stealing from your own home? From your kids?" She didn't answer. Just covered her face with both hands and moaned, "I don't even know why I married you in the first place." That cut deep. But I didn't let it show. "This is your last chance to accept this deal," I said, keeping my tone steady. "Because if you don't, I will bring everything down around you. Just like you did to me." I started to leave, walking toward the front door when I heard her call out behind me. "Austin, wait. Please, if you just let me explain, there's more to all of this. You have to listen." She sounded desperate, like she finally realized I wasn't bluffing. I hesitated, pulled out my phone, and started dialing. I wasn't even sure who I was calling. Maybe my attorney, maybe the police. I never got the chance to find out. Because just as I raised the phone to my ear, a figure came into view. I hadn't even heard him come in. Before I could react, he lunged forward, snatched the phone out of my hand, and slammed it onto the hardwood floor, shattering it into pieces. "You don't understand," he said, eyes wide. "It'll only take 2 minutes. Just listen and I promise you'll see, you'll feel like yourself again." I didn't know what he was talking about. I didn't care. I bolted. Heart pounding, I spun around and dashed into the garage, dodging his grasp as he reached out for me again. I felt his fingers snatch at the back of my jacket, so I twisted out of it and kept moving. In the kitchen, I spotted something on the table, a meat cleaver from last night's dinner prep. I grabbed it without thinking. Not as a weapon but as insurance. I turned left, ducked into the side hallway, and slipped out the back door into the dark. Later, the police arrived. When they questioned Rachel about what happened, all she could say through tears was, "We just wanted to talk to him. That's all. We didn't mean for this to happen." The next morning, my attorney stood before the judge on my behalf. The judge was furious. He ruled that Rachel had 48 hours to vacate the house and cover the cost of changing the locks. Until the criminal investigation was complete, she would not be permitted any contact with the girls. No visits. No exceptions. The divorce proceedings were frozen, put on hold until her criminal case could be resolved. Detective Grayson was the one who finally pushed her to speak honestly. Under questioning, Rachel admitted to having had 4 separate intimate encounters with Jack Taylor. But she insisted she hadn't left his house until 3 a.m. that Friday morning, which, if true, could potentially contradict the timeline from the private investigator. She tried turning the blame on me, of course. Claimed I'd staged the theft. That I stole our own valuables and framed her. But her story didn't add up, not even to herself. She admitted I had never had access to the safe, nor to the locked drawer in her desk. She was the only one with the keys and she kept them with her at all times. When questioned about the storage unit, the one tied directly to the missing items, she waved it off as a misunderstanding. Said the keys, both the one in her purse and the one inside the safe, must have gotten mixed up. It was a flimsy story. But at this point it wasn't just her words on the record. It was evidence. And the truth was closing in. To be honest, I hadn't opened the safe in over 3 months, not since before Rachel's so-called team-building night. There hadn't been a reason to. Life had been on autopilot and I had no idea the floor beneath me was already cracking. When the investigation ramped up, An expert was brought in to validate our timeline. Between Bill's security footage and our home's alarm system, the timestamps all aligned perfectly. There was no question, the break-in, the power cut, the missing items, it all matched up. No tampering. No technical errors. Just facts. As the case moved to trial and jury selection began, Rachel and Jack Taylor started getting nervous. I could tell from their lawyers' tones, from the sudden shift in strategy. They tried cutting a deal with the prosecutor, hoping to downgrade the charges to misdemeanors. But it was too late. The evidence was stacked high and it wasn't leaning in their favor. Eventually Rachel gave in. She agreed to give me full custody of the girls. No arguments. No more courtroom battles over their well-being. She went to prison, and in the eyes of the court, our marriage had ended because of her infidelity. Because of her choices. I was granted the house, and though the remaining assets were divided between us, minus her mounting legal fees, the judge also ordered her to pay for my attorney's services. She'd be required to pay alimony too, for at least 3 years after her release. When it was all over, I walked out of the courthouse with Bill at my side. He was grinning from ear to ear. "What's with the smile?" I asked, my voice still thick from everything that had just happened. "I was just thinking about how we got here," he said. I narrowed my eyes. "Okay, spill it." "Remember that first piece of evidence?" he said. "The one that confirmed it all? That was a glass used by Jack." I blinked. "You're kidding." He laughed. "Nope. I slipped the waiter $100 to bring me the glass after they left the restaurant. Then I followed them. Stayed out of sight. When they kissed before she got in his car, I took a photo of the license plate. That was Monday. By Tuesday, I'd ID'd him, Jack Taylor. Found his address too." I shook my head, part amused, part in awe. That was when I decided to bring in a private investigator to trail Rachel during the following 2 Fridays. I needed to be sure. And sure enough, the PI delivered. He caught them together, same guy, same pattern. But I wanted more than pictures. I wanted access. So one night, using a fast-melting alloy, I made a duplicate of her keys. Took only minutes. That same evening, I slipped on gloves and replaced the front door lock entirely, top to bottom. Just to test her, I showed Rachel the new lock a few days later. "You ever seen this before?" I asked casually, holding out both the original and the copy. She took a long look, turning them over in her hand. "No," she said. "I don't think so. Why are you asking?" I smiled faintly and took the keys back. "No reason," I replied. I told Rachel that if she didn't need the lock anymore, I'd like to use it to secure my toolbox in the garage. She nodded and said sure, no problem. Then she left. Once she was gone, I carefully placed the lock in a sealed plastic bag, hoping her fingerprints would still be intact. I wasn't about to overlook a single detail. Everything that happened next, it wasn't an act of revenge. It was strategy. Precision. I gave instructions to someone I trusted, someone who owed me. He was to enter Jack Taylor's property through the side gate, quietly, without raising any suspicion. Using the spare key to Rachel's car, he would take it and drive it away. Then he'd use lockpicks to break into Jack's vehicle, wedge my gold cufflinks between the passenger seat and the center console. Obvious but not too neat. I'd already prepared a small gift box, carefully wrapped, with Jack's name on the tag. Inside was my Rolex, the one that had been stolen. That box went into the trunk of Rachel's car. Earlier that same day, I'd rented a van, parked it inside my garage, and disabled the automatic garage door opener. I'd planned everything down to the last minute. 2 days before the operation, I made sure to rig one of the basement windows with a false set of metal bars. From the outside it looked secure, but it could be popped open with a little pressure. That window became the exit route. Then I waited. A few weeks later, I got a message from the woman playing a role in all this, an actress helping me close the final loop. She said she and her boyfriend had left Jack's place just before 11 p.m. It was a hot, sticky night, and Jack had left several windows open in Rachel's car, supposedly to let the air circulate. That meant there was no need to force the door. Slipping in the cufflinks would be simple. At exactly 11:02 p.m. I was back at Bill's place. I'd already opened the basement window there in advance. I slid out of the car, ran behind the garage, hopped on the motorcycle I'd hidden beneath the trees earlier, and looped back around, avoiding cameras, collecting the reflectors I'd left for cover. Back inside Bill's house, I resealed the basement window and reattached the fake metal bars. Just like that, clean, fast, no trace. The fact that Jack ended up coming to my place afterward, trying to defend himself, throwing himself into the middle of the storm I'd stirred, well, that was unexpected. But in a strange way, satisfying. As for Rachel? I never truly figured out what pulled her toward Jack in the first place. Or if he was just one of many. She never gave me an answer. And truth be told, I never really asked. I think, deep down, I stopped needing the explanation. There's only so many times someone can lie to your face before the why just doesn't matter anymore.